So I'm going to make a pledge right here. I'm going to go and buy Monster Hunter World on Steam. I'm going to start fresh, and I'm going to document my entire journey. After an 8-month journey in Monster Hunter World and completing my pledge, this will be the last of my journals. Welcome back, hunters, to the final Monster Hunter World journal as Fatalis has slain in what I can only say was a clutch moment. So it's been a long ride. There has been many journaling, many experiences, and what a ride this has been. 8 months in the making, from not liking Monster Hunter, the franchise, to trying the game, to pledging to kill everything, to knocking up against some big hard monsters, and finally I've slain Fatalis a little bit faster than I expected. But anyways, he is dead, and we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the journey. So sit back, relax, and let's talk about the Fatalis grind. So this really took me, for comparison's sake, I had 3 major walls in the end game, all with black dragons, if we call this a black dragon, although I think Valkana's just consider an elder dragon. So Alatreon took me 3 full streams to beat my first major wall. That was about a 12-hour commitment of knocking my head against that wall. Arc-Tempered Valkana was by far the largest and hardest wall to overcome at 5 streams, which accounts for about 20 hours of just fighting the same monster over and over. Now, Fatalis is sprinkled in. Like, I kept testing the waters here and there throughout the streams, but when I really went at it, it was about a stream and a half, or roughly 6 hours of time to actually take down Fatalis. And this fight has left me with mixed emotions because of many reasons. I think it's, first of all, the fact that this was the pinnacle of the journey. We all knew we were heading towards Fatalis, and Fatalis was going to be the end. So there is that whole moment, like there's nothing like I don't think you can properly encapsulate the emotion of, you know how they always say it's the journey, not the destination. So when you kill Fatalis, the destination has been achieved, but how does that compare against the journey? It doesn't. It's just a little piece in this grand adventure. So there is that conflicting emotion. The second emotion is, you know, the skill gap. Every monster is about closing a skill gap. And I think the thrill and the excitement of every fight has been seeing my skill increase to close that gap. And Alatreon did that very much. Alatreon taught me how to use the sword aspect of the switch axe a lot more, and how to be conscious about charging the sword mode enough so that I can use it repeatedly enough to do the DPS check. That was a massive jump in knowledge. Arc-Tempered Valkana, another jump in knowledge where I had to learn how to be mobile with the switch axe and also deal out enough damage to beat the timer, as well as use the environment and optimize my build. I would say after you've done those two, the skill gap that's left to beat Fatalis at this point was a lot smaller. In hindsight, you know, I didn't necessarily learn how to use my weapon any better. I think Arc-Tempered Valkana was the monster that really helped me fully appreciate what that weapon can do. And while I'd say I'm a veteran of the switch axe now, and there's still room for improvement for sure, but Fatalis didn't necessarily require me to learn anything new with the switch axe. It was more about learning the monster itself and learning how to move around that. And then the added level of emotion is the fact that the Fatalis fight is so filled with weaponry and like other aspects to the fight that I think it takes away from the fight a little bit. So, you know, here we are in a game where it's you versus nature. Throughout the whole game, every monster you've taken out, it's mostly you versus nature. Even when you're knocking boulders from the ceiling, that is nature that's there waiting for you to take advantage of it. With Fatalis, the fact that these are like man-made weaponry that you're using against it, that took something away from me. I didn't like the fact that there were cannons and all this weaponry to use on Fatalis. Like, I'm a little bit in favor of the Arc-Tempered. Like, if someone asked me, what is your favorite fight, Fatalis or Arc-Tempered Velkhana? I'm actually leaning towards Arc-Tempered Velkhana because of the immense amount of knowledge I got from that. And also, it was just me versus this Ice Dragon. I didn't have to use cannons or anything. It was a constant fight and a dance with it. Whereas Fatalis, it's constant fight and dance. And I know that there's a lot of arguments that can be made that I can just ignore all of that. And also, a lot of people can say, well, the switch axe is Fatalis' weak points, and there's a cheese strategy around it, which of course I completely exploited. But needless to say, this was my experience. This is how I went through it, and this is what I can compare. The fight of Fatalis, you know, even the NPCs, even the way that the story is built, it's all about use everything you have to your advantage because this is the god of gods that you have to slay. And I get that. And at the beginning, it feels like, oh my God, this is an immense tower. Like, how do we take this down? We need to use everything in our arsenal. But I felt that with Arc-Tempered Velkhana, and the fact that all I had was my little dinky weapon in comparison, and that I still knocked it down and killed it, like, I feel that was more of a rush. And I think the last thing to consider is how I killed Fatalis. It wasn't an invasion sensation. It wasn't the Dragonator. It wasn't this awesome, like, switch axe move. It was, of all things, it was a clutch claw tickle. What? And it caught me so off guard because things were getting like intense. And while I was a little bit more comfortable in the fight, like I still had a few carts to spare, I was really sweating because the timer, we were now under the 5-minute mark. I wasn't seeing this fight slowing down. And I even said on stream, I was like, you know what? If I died to the timer, it's fine. This would be the first time I died to the timer. So in my mind, that was progress. I was kind of already like preparing myself to fail. And so anyways, I'm dodging the attacks, I'm fighting. And then I want to do the zero-sum discharge clutch claw move. And I think I was out of range the first time. And I got closer and I was about to do it and he was about to like shoot at me. And it was the clutch claw that hit him, which means that means he had less than 10 HP when I hit him with that. So like any other move could have been cool, but nope, we get the clutch claw that ruins it. So there's that. There's also the fact that like in a lot of fights, monster fights, all of them, I love the fact that at certain points you can mount. And I don't know why, but with Fatalis, I was never able to mount him. I kept trying, even like later in the fight where I would assume a threshold was unlocked that I could, mount him and get that like rush. It never happened. So it just felt like it felt like a very different fight. That's all it is. It just feels very different than everything that came before it. Even the dance is not so much about a dance. It's more about you move or you die. Like there is so much one-shot kills that it's not so much a dance as though as you stepped in the wrong space. You're gone, banished to the Shadow Realm. And it's less forgiving, which makes it feel less like you're learning a dance. So after the first stream, honestly, I was like, oh my God, do I not like the Fatalis fight? I'm like, oh no, I'm going to have to make a journal where I legit don't like the Fatalis fight and I'm going to get like destroyed for that. But then after the second stream, which is the one where I actually killed him, it was starting to feel like more of a dance, but it didn't quite click the way, say, Alatreon felt or the way Arc-Tempered Velkhana felt. Those, I think, were more iconic in terms of a fight and in terms of a first-time experience. Fatalis felt a little out of place in the journey. Like it felt like a boss. It felt like an endgame boss, but it didn't necessarily feel like a Monster Hunter World endgame boss, if that makes sense, because everything about it felt so different. Now, I went back in after I killed him, and I did a multiplayer fight. And with the multiplayer fight, we didn't use any of the equipment. And I have to say, that felt a lot more like genuine and a lot more in line with Monster Hunter. But also, it felt a little too easy. And I think that's because I didn't have Fatalis's like aggro on me, so I could get in my shots where I wanted without really worrying too much about its attacks. And I had a pretty good crew of good teammates that didn't die. In fact, I was the only one that died in that multiplayer rush. So like we just went in there, just bam, and he died, I think, to the Dragonator hit, which was also like, oh, why did we use the tool? So that's the only time we used the tool. And I think actually this kind of echoes a feeling I had with Monster Hunter Rise with the whole rampage, and also with the final fights in Monster Hunter Rise, because they too use a lot of weaponry. And I don't know if it's just me, but there's something that just feels a little off. Now, I'm not saying like get rid of all weaponry, because I think they have a place, but I don't think like Capcom, I don't think you should put your weaponry in the final. There should definitely be a fight where weaponry is involved. Like the Velkhana fight when it was attacking Celiana and you're defending the town with weaponry. That felt pretty cool. Like whenever you have like a story moment like that, that feels great. But I think you should just leave the final fights to just be between the hunter and the monster, and leave all the weird like man-made weapons out of it. To me, I think that just feels better. Maybe like story-wise it's not as good, but it does feel better. The first time on stream that I also the proof of a hero, what like it's such a buff for the hunter. It feels so amazing. And when I first triggered it, I think I was on my last cart. So like I got the rush and I died because the adrenaline. So I got to hear proof of a hero 2 or 3 times before I like actually made it. And I was really hoping that the first time I heard proof of a hero, it triggers at a point where you're pretty much guaranteed to win, so that like you don't ruin the proof of a hero. So I ruined proof of a hero 2-3 times, which I'm like, oh man, I got like my song playing and I fell on my face. That didn't feel so good, but the fact that cues in that fight is fantastic. I mean, I love it. I think it was way better cued in that fight than say I think it was the Ibushi fight, which happens in a rampage. And I talked about that in my Monster Hunter Rise journal. So overall, like if I have to like do the journey, like beats, I would say, I think we peaked at Arc Tempered Velkhana in terms of like journey, rush, and emotions. And like Fatalis was like, just kind of like that sweet send off, which wrapped up the whole thing. And I guess I was expecting more Fatalis to be what Arc Tempered Velkhana did to me. And maybe that's my own fault, because Arc Tempered Velkhana was added in after Fatalis. So like I did kind of break the sequence a little bit. But considering what Fatalis represented, how he was at the start of my stream since the very beginning, the whole thing, like I'm happy I ended with Fatalis. I just kind of wish, I guess I got a little bit more out of it. Kind of like with Arc Tempered Velkhana. But it's just a testament maybe of me growing as a hunter that, yeah, that skill gap was just smaller for Fatalis, and that's all it is. So after that, now we're in the point where I'm going to have to grind out the Fatalis armor, which looks freaking amazing. So after the first fight, I was able to build one piece. The fact that all the armor pieces have 3 decoration slots with 4 slot deco gem or whatever, you guys know what I mean. The fact that you can max out the decorations on each piece, I'm like, oh my god, I can slot in like up to 15 decorations, all like 4 slots. I think that's what they are. And then looking at the skills, how it all comes together with the switch axe, I don't quite appreciate it yet, but the fact that you get like 100 health boost just by having, I think, 2 pieces of armor or maybe 4 pieces of armor, I'm like, oh, get rid of those vitality like decoration slots, let's bring in better like slots in there. So I'm really looking forward to getting my full Fatalis set so that I can like just like trample over everything. We went back after multiplayer. I got one of the evil eyes, so I was able to build the switch axe, but I have so much grinding to do. And I say so much, it's gonna take like, in multiplayer I think it would take maybe 2 to 4 hours to grind it all out, to get that full armor set. And that actually made me appreciate my Arc Tempered Velkhana fight more. I'm like, oh my god, I can't imagine how much easier it would be to kill this thing if I had this set. So I'm even more happy that I killed Arc Tempered Velkhana without the Fatalis set, because I'm like, that's a huge badge of honor for me now. Like, oh, I did it without this fancy gear and before Fatalis. So I'm really happy with how this whole journey played out. So yeah, we're doing that. And now where do we go from here? So, I mean, it's been a crazy journey. I would love to reminisce with all of you the last 8 months and how we journeyed, but I think I will save that for a different video outside of this series of journal. In terms of the journal, it was all about documenting my experience in Monster Hunter World and sharing that with all of you. And now that we've come to the end, this has to be the final journal. In terms of next step, the next stream, I'm just going to have some fun and do the photography quests. So we're going to go in and play Monster Hunter Snap and just do like a filler episode, as I like to call it, because I really envision this as like an anime arc. We're going to do that. And then after that stream, a week later, we're going to be going to the old world. So if you're seeing this journal, it's probably the day that I'm going to be shooting the, or not shooting, the streaming Monster Hunter Snap. And then a week from when this video drops, we're going to be starting our next Monster Hunter journey in the old world. And that's going to be I'm going to be revealing that in a separate short video. There's a lot of games to go in Monster Hunter Old World. And there's been a lot of opinions as to where I should go. And I have decided which game I'm going to be going into and what we're going to be talking about over the next few months. And I'm really excited to share all that with you. So stay tuned in a different video. I think we're going to focus our stream time to the old world and comparing what Monster Hunter used to be like before Monster Hunter World, when it went like full mainstream, and then Rise, of course. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what are the roots of this franchise, and I will see you in the reveal video or on the next stream. So until next time, hunters, keep it classy.